Hey guys, Eli here. I figured it's time to shine light on another metal genre and talk about the albums that got me into it.
Today we are talking about Doom, metal's slowest and heaviest genre. This is not a definitive list. These just happen to be what I heard first and more or less in this order. Basically, these are from my teen years through my early 20s.
All right, now we're kind of going to do this podcast style. There's going to be no editing. I'm just going to, shoot from the hip. Now, Black Sabbath, obviously, if this were a definitive list, that'd be at the top, but this is not a definitive list. This is just, like I said, kind of in the order that I discovered this music. Uh, Black Sabbath are arguably my favorite band. I usually say it's a tie between them and Rush. I got into them as a teenager, probably around 16 or so. I was actually a big Ozzy fan first. I had all Ozzy's albums, and then I figured, hey, I need to check out this band that he was in pre, solo stuff. Funny story, I found this box of tapes in our basement back in, when I was living with my parents. It was a bunch of tapes that my uncle had given my dad, just tapes that he didn't want anymore. I was digging through them looking for stuff to listen to. I found this mixtape that he had made. Yes, an actual mixtape. That's what they did back in the 80s. uh, anyways, I was looking at the songs on there. There was like Halloween, Black Sabbath. It was the only one out of that whole box that was like looked really metal to me. Most of it was like glam metal and stuff like that. There was like some Warrant in there, Motley Crue, stuff like that. But anyways, grabbed this mixtape that had the Black Sabbath song on there. Went in my room, put it in my tape deck. The only Sabbath song it had was the self-titled Black Sabbath song. Turned it on, and honestly, it terrified me. It literally scared the devil out of me. I'm pretty sure I listened to the whole song, but I was like, this is not for me. This is way too evil sounding. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I can't handle this. So I kind of shelved that for a while. I think I came back to it maybe a couple of months later, or 6 months, something like that. And I was like, as much as that scared me, it was really cool. So I got to listen to it again. And then I just fell in love. And Black Sabbath have been my favorite band since I was, 16 or 17. Still to this day, they are. Uh, and still to this day, the that atmosphere on that first Black Sabbath album is just undeniable. Especially the self-titled song. You get the 30 seconds or so of just pure atmosphere. All you hear is rain and church bells. I mean, it's just perfect. What a song! A single song that spawned an entire subgenre. Blues from the Red Sun was the first Kyuss album I ever got, and it was kind of funny. I found this band kind of on accident. Uh, I bought a CD from somebody, I can't remember where or when. I was probably 20 years old or so, and the CD inside of it was not the one that was supposed to be in there. I can't remember what it was. Probably some Slayer album or something like that. So I get home, I take the CD out of the case, and I was like, this doesn't look like what I was expecting because if I remember correctly, this CD does not have the title on it. So I put it in the stereo, hit play, and I'm like, yeah, this is not Slayer or whatever it was supposed to be, Cannibal Corpse or something. Uh, so I this is pre a lot of things. This was in probably like 2001, 2002. God, I don't think I owned a computer. Internet was still in its infancy basically. So I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to find out who this is? So I brought it to a bunch of friends and had them listen to it. And finally, this guy at work is like, oh, this is Kyuss. He knew like almost right away. And I was like, Kyuss, okay. I started listening to it. At first, it wasn't really my thing. I hate to admit it, but the vocals were kind of a roadblock. John Garcia's vocals are definitely unique. You don't usually hear bands like this with a singer like John Garcia, but that's what gives its unique charm. And if you kind of research Caius's history, it's very cool. There was like this desert rock scene in California, Southern California, where there's these bands. They all kind of grew up in the same area in the desert. Most of those guys still live there because they just have this. There's this weird thing where these people just love the desert. They love it. So, anyways, they would have these parties where they would get together and play like concerts for each other out in the desert. They would bring like generators and extension cords, and they would play shows for each other and each other's friends and stuff like that. Uh, Other bands like I can't remember. I'm not super knowledgeable with that scene. I can't. Yeah, I can't remember the names. Anyways, couple of bands. Very cool story. I thought I would have loved to have been there to see that. Just sounds awesome. Obviously, if you know a little bit about this kind of stuff, Josh. I never knew how to pronounce his last name. Is it Homie, Homi, Hom, whatever? Guitarist for Kyuss went on to form Queens of the Stone Age, who were massively successful, much more successful than Kyuss ever were. And I like Queens of the Stone Age as well. They won't be making an appearance on this in this video. Not they're close, but not quite. So yeah. Anyways, I didn't include them. But Kyuss, this is a great album. Maybe not my favorite Kyuss album. I think my favorite might be "And the Circus Left Town." But all four of their albums are really awesome. They should have, gotten bigger than they were. I think they deserved a better fate, but whatever. A lot of the guys from Kyuss are now doing their, not now, but they've been doing their solo projects or other projects for years and years and years. So they all live on, making cool music. So go check some of that out as well. Again, I haven't heard all of it, but what I've heard, pretty cool stuff. So, anyways, Kyuss, Blues for the Red Sun, uh, very endearing album for me. I love it. Now, Eyehategod are another one of those bands that I discovered probably when I was 18 or 19 years old. That's when I really was starting to discover stuff. I kind of had a late start. Due to, internet being still in its infancy, me growing up in a small town, not having a lot of friends that were into this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. But so High and Fire, or not High and Fire, Eyehategod, first time I heard them, another band that scared the living shit out of me. I'd never heard anything this disgusting, this vitriolic, and this abrasive ever. I mean, I just had not. So another one of those bands where I kind of shelved for a little while, and I don't know. I think I probably would return to it a year later or so, and just kind of fall in love with it. This is the first album I ever owned from them. I still only own like two albums. For some reason, I've heard some of their other stuff. It's just as good, but for some odd reason, Dopesick for me is just like kind of, it's just like, this is all I need. This is perfect. I don't really need anything else. Someday I'm sure I'll get more of their stuff, but yeah, I was kind of getting into black metal at the same time that I discovered this, and in a weird way, Dopesick reminded me of black metal. I was like, this is just as nasty, just as vicious as black metal. It almost sounded, like a doom black metal to me. I know it's not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying at all that this is in any way black metal, but it has that same fucking spirit, if you know what I mean. And yeah, if you've heard this album, if you think about it hard enough, I think you could probably agree with what I'm saying, or at least understand, relate to what I'm saying. But anyways, Eyehategod, Dopesick, love it to this day.
She's in love with herself. She likes the dark.
Typo Negative I discovered in probably 2000 or 2001, and it was this exact album, Bloody Kisses. Uh, Blew me away from the start. I don't know what it was. Yeah, I just was instantly attached to this album. I've always just kind of felt like this album was part of me over the years. I love it as much today as I did the first time I heard it. I guess in that matter, I've never listed this as one of my all-time favorite albums, but I think, according to what I just said, I think it would have to be. I mean, this has got to be in my top. If I were to have a top 10 album list, this would have to be on there. I remember I was introduced to them by this girl that I was kind of seeing, 18 years old. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. But she showed this to me. And to be honest, I think I kind of grew tired of that girl really quickly. So I think we didn't date for long. So I think I was kind of at first like, I don't want to check out this Typo Negative band because she liked them and they must suck. But once I checked this album out, like I said, blew me away. Love it to this day. I still, in my opinion, I think this is their finest hour. I know a lot of people would agree with that, but a lot of people would say October Rust, or I think most people go for Bloody Kisses or October Rust, and I do love October Rust, but Bloody Kisses, oh my God, just from beginning to end, I repeat, there's not 1 second of filler on this album. The songwriting is amazing. Peter Steele and his boys were just on top of their game. There, no two songs here sound the same. I mean, this is just so creative, so brilliant. And I know a lot of people don't consider Typo Negative doom. I get it, and this is where I stand with genres. Genres are just boxes that we try to fit stuff in. Most bands, especially older bands, they didn't come out and just be like, "Hey, we're a doom band." They're like they would say, "Hey, we're a rock band," or "We're a heavy metal band." Most bands don't like, being pigeonholed. They don't like being categorized. So I think an argument for saying Typo Negative is a doom band is just as important and just as relevant as saying that they aren't. For me, in most of their music, I hear a lot of doom. If you're not going to call, again, humans like to put things in boxes. We like to label things and classify them. If you didn't call them a doom band, what else would you call them? I guess you could call them a gothic metal band. I'd say they're like a gothic doom, and that's where I'm going to leave this. So, what do you guys think? All right, so along with Typo Negative and even Kyuss, especially Kyuss, Melvins might be one of the bands where you're like, hey, they're not Doom. I've heard plenty of people call Melvins Doom. I've heard people call them sludge. But really, when it comes down to it, they're one of those bands that they have just transcended genre after genre. They've had hardcore and punk in their music. They've had grunge. They've had, in my opinion, sludge and doom and noise rock even. They're kind of all of those things. But if I were to label Melvins in one single genre, I'd probably consider them a doom band. So don't know how you feel. Let me know. This was the first Melvins album I ever heard, Sonar Witch. First one I ever heard, and to this day, probably my favorite. I like a lot of Melvins albums. This is not necessarily their slowest and heaviest. It's still slow and heavy, but the songwriting is just awesome. The songs are super catchy. Buzz's vocals are just so catchy. His choruses are so well written. Everything on this album is just awesome and perfect. It's addicting, and I love listening to it to this day. When I want to hear Melvins, this is usually the first album I go to. Then I go to like Gluey Porch Treatments or something like that. But what do you guys think? I know there are people out there that are much bigger Melvins fans than me. Is this one of your favorites, or where does this rank for you in their catalog?